Chris. Today we are going to be drawing our still life using a grid. Now when using a grid, it's important to continually reference those intersection lines, and also you can always subdivide those lines even further to get more detail. The other thing is you always want to continue to reference those other objects in your composition. So today I'm going to be looking at this mannequin in my still life. I've started to lay out the line work and the rest of my drawing. So I've got the coffee bean jar, the French press, the thermos. I started laying out these can of pencils, and you always want to make sure you do this very, very lightly. So an H pencil, 2H, 4H, 6H is really light, but you want to make sure your line work is really light because this is just going to disappear whenever we start to apply the value. So looking at this mannequin right here, I'm looking at my grid. I'm going to count over from the top right, 1, 2, 3, and then down, 1, 2, 3. So I know the top of my head is going to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, somewhere in this quadrant. I'm going to go ahead and outline this on my iPad so you can see what I'm talking about. 1, 2, 3, and I would normally start with the bottom left, but since this is just for today's exercise, I'll just call this top right one box 1, and this would also, I'll just do these, I'll call them letters. So we'll do 1A, this will be B, C, D, E, F, G, okay, etc. So I'm looking at 1A and counting over to 3B, and 3C is where I actually start drawing this mannequin head. So you can see right here, that's about halfway in my grid box. So on my paper, I can go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and I know that right about here is where that mannequin head starts. And then as I draw the contour line, I'm looking at this point of the mannequin. If I divide this in half, it's a little bit between 1/4 and 1/2. I can get really precise with this, but I'm going to make a just right around half or to the left of half. And I can basically plot out a connected dot in where all these points intersect my grid. So this one is just beyond left of half there. So I can continue to draw this contour, and right before it hits, that would be 4D, it's going to stop and come across towards that corner and go up from 4D to 3D and intersect right there between line CD, and I'm in the column 3. So to draw that on my paper, I'm going to figure out where that midpoint is. Just do this in lighter line. Here's a 2H pencil. And it's going to come down here. Cross that grid and come over. So roughly that shape. Now I can refine this a little bit later. It looks like it's actually a little bit to the left of where I've drawn it, but I'm going to go ahead and start filling in some of the rest of this drawing. So next I'm going to draw this neck portion, but then also the interior lines of this head. Right here, as it intersects these grid lines. I'm basically plotting points of intersection, as you can see here in the red ink, and identifying those so that way I can create a connect the dot, which will give me a very accurate drawing hopefully when I'm done. So you can do this in real life too. You can see people holding up their pencil. That's just basically getting a measurement in relation to something else, and basically creating a scale for yourself instead of a 1-inch grid. But you can also just think, well, this door is, you know, twice as large as that bag over there, so I'm going to take the bag and put it 2 door widths away, etc. So you can give yourself scales within your own composition to make an accurate drawing. So as I lay this out, Alright, so as I get towards the bottom here, right where the mannequin is behind this coffee thermos, I'm not only going to reference the grid, but I'm going to reference the details on the coffee thermos, like where this little line comes across right here, and right here, and obviously where the cap is of the coffee thermos, where the mannequin leg is wrapping behind it. I not only have the grid to reference, but I know that it should hide right behind the cap of the thermos and then stick over a little bit. And then this left leg is coming down, and the thigh basically is ending right between the cap and this first line. Right about there is where it ends. Okay, so always reference those areas as well, because if there's an issue with your grid, or if you get a little bit off, it just gives you a second check. I'm just going to use a straight edge to do some of the straight line work, because it'll just speed things up. Right where that pole comes down through the mannequin's leg, I may as well make it straight. If I freehand it, I can get pretty close, but this will also help me kind of direct the line right where I want it to, because if I know where it starts and where it ends, I can do a freehand line that trails through the grid, or I can just connect those points and make sure that the distance in between is perfectly accurate. So then the base of this mannequin is an ellipse, and I can use what I know about ellipses in perspective to finish that off. So I can draw through. Oops, I got a little too far down. So I noticed I was in the wrong quadrant as I start to draw that, and that's why we have erasers, right? So it actually needs to end right here. Double check yourself. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, but also that means you have to erase them. Okay, so I think I have the mannequin just about done. I'm going to just come back in and start to refine things with a little bit of a darker graphite, or you can go back in there with 2H as well. Again, I'm just doing this so you can see it in the camera. You want to keep this line weight extremely light, because there should not be any outlining. The only time you see a line is the shift in value, so that means there's an edge that's lighter than the background, or it's an object in front of another object, so you'd see that line. Now in my object, it looks like there's a lot of lines, but really those are highlights reflecting off of surfaces, so it will be nice and straight. However, when I do that in value, I'm basically leaving that very light value, and then the value next to it, I'll try to match exactly as I can, but it won't look like a line. It'll be a gradation or shading next to it. Another little tip, if you use your reference image, whether it's printed out or on a screen, putting it really close to what you're actually drawing, it gives yourself less room to make mistakes or to lose the information that what you're observing and putting it on paper. Right, the less room that you have to translate that information should improve your accuracy. I'm going to put that iPad right next to my mannequin head as I draw this in here. Now this is off, and I'm observing this as I'm drawing, but if you look at the grid, the way in which I drew the mannequin head, it looks like it's really far over when it should cut through and end right here and actually intersect this corner. So I actually have to move this head over and make it slightly smaller. So that's why, if you get it right the first time, good for you, but you will be making adjustments, and that's why we're drawing with really light lead. Use your pink pearl eraser or your kneaded eraser to make those adjustments. And try to keep your drawing nice and neat. I don't have much graphite on here because it's just line work right now and 2H graphite, so I don't have to worry about smudging so much. But as I start to lay in a value, which will be the next step after I refine my line work, I would want to keep a nice clean piece of paper underneath my hand as I start to work. So from here, once my line work is fully complete, I'm going to check over everything, make sure I don't need to fix any of the shapes, fix any of the outlines. I'll refine any of the details, make sure it's proportional and to scale and in the right location on my paper. Then I'm going to start erasing some of my grid lines. I'm going to get rid of all the negative space, and then I'm going to start blocking in my values. That'll be in the next video. But first, prepare your paper, get rid of the grid that is going to be in your way. You might want to leave some of it as reference for those value transitions, but most of those transitions, as you can see in the French press and into the coffee beans, I actually gave myself an indicator of a contour line of where that would start and end. So I don't actually need any of my grids left. So I'm going to come in here with my block eraser and get rid of the big areas. I'll come in with a kneaded eraser and get rid of the lines in my objects and get ready to move on from there. All right, good luck with your contour lines and use that grid to your advantage. Have fun.